Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So in today's video I'm going to talk about why type 1 diabetics should eat high carb plant-based diets. So straight away a number of you are probably thinking, hang on, I'm diabetic, I can't eat carbohydrates, or at the very least you're thinking I can't eat a high amount of carbohydrates. And the reason for that is because there's this wide prevailing misconception out there that people who are diabetic, can't eat carbs, but you have to ask yourself, what is type 1 diabetes? And the answer to that is type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition in which the person's immune system attacks the beta cells in the pancreas which create insulin, and in turn what happens is the person is no longer able to produce insulin, and therefore the blood sugar increases. So carbohydrates excuse me, so carbohydrates are in no way, shape or form the reason why blood sugars rise in someone who is type 1 diabetic. The reason why it goes up is because the person doesn't have enough insulin. So to that you're probably thinking, well hang on, if that's the case, then why is it I get high blood sugars if I have some carbs? And so what happens is when people eat high fat diets, so an example would be someone who's, say, in the United States or a typical Western country, and they're consuming animal products. So these people consume meat, fish, chicken, eggs, milk, dairy, etc. And what happens is when people eat these foods, because they're high in fat and high in protein, what happens is they actually cause insulin resistance. So what happens is the people trying to avoid the high blood sugar will eat the animal products because they think, oh hang on, there's not that many carbs in here, so I'm not going to get a blood sugar spike. So what happens is those people will eat the animal products, but what happens is the fat will actually cover the cell, and what happens then is that the fat that those people have eaten, these type 1 diabetics have eaten, has then covered the cell, and what happens is the carbohydrates, they can't get into the cell because the fat is covering it. And what happens is, the way to imagine it is that insulin is the key that unlocks the door. So insulin is the key that goes into the door hole and unlocks it. But what happens is people, because they're eating these high fat diets, the insulin can't get in. So imagine if you had a door hole and you went and put some chewing gum in there, you wouldn't be able to get a key in there because it's going to be clogged. And a lot of type 1 diabetics, they make this sort of fallacy that if I eat low carb, that I'll be fine, I'll be better off. What often you'll see is that people who are type 1 who eat these high fat low carb diets, they actually can have quite bad blood sugar management. They can have a lot of lows, they can have a lot of highs, and in addition to that their insulin's carbohydrate ratios are absolutely terrible, like 1 to 3 or something along those lines. So what happens is, to reiterate, so the type 1 people, they eat the animal products, they eat the low carb high fat diets, the fat gets into the body, covers the cell, and it stops the carbs from getting in. So what happens is the blood sugar then begins to rise and go up, and they then think, oh, because I've eaten some carbohydrates and my blood sugar's now gone up, that there must therefore mean that it's the carbohydrates the problem, but it isn't. It was the fat that has caused the insulin resistance, which means the insulin is less effective, and as a result and as a consequence of that, the sugar then goes up. So the solution to type 1 diabetes, well, to say solution is kind of wrong because it gives the impression that it can be reversed. There's not a single recorded case in medical literature of type 1 diabetes being reversed. It's just never happened. It's never been recorded once in medical literature. So you can't ever reverse your type 1 diabetes, but you can ultimately improve your condition through a high-carb plant-based diet, and the mechanism by which that happens is insulin sensitivity. So you move a state from one state over here of insulin resistance to one state over here of insulin sensitivity. So for example, if you're type 1 diabetic like me, what that means is you actually have to measure out how many carbohydrates you have, and then what you need to do is you need to work out how much insulin you need, and what this is called is an insulin to carbohydrate ratio. So let's say, for example, you had someone who, for every 10 grams of carbohydrates that they consumed, they needed 1 unit of insulin. What that would mean is that person has an insulin to carbohydrate ratio of 1 to 10. So what we can see in insulin to carbohydrate ratios is people's sensitivity. So for example, I became type 1 diabetic in April of 2014. I started off on an insulin to carbohydrate ratio of 1 to 10. But when I went vegan in November 2014, so a year ago now, I actually started getting hypoglycemic attacks. And what happened to my body is, because I stopped consuming milk, because I stopped consuming chicken and a few other animal products, and to be honest with you, I wasn't eating that much compared to the average person, but that small amount that I was having relative to another person was still enough to make me insulin resistant. So what happened is, in November, I stopped eating animal products, and thanks to a guy called Jurien Rider and a documentary called Forks Over Knives, and I started eating fruits, vegetables, rice, sweet potatoes, grains, a few nuts and seeds here and there, and basically a plant-based diet. And what happened is I started getting these hypoglycemic attacks, and what was happening to my body is it was becoming more sensitive to insulin. So instead of needing 1 unit of insulin per 10 grams of carbs, it improved so that I only needed 1 unit of insulin for 18 grams of carbs, and then it improved more, so I needed 1 unit to 25 grams of carbs, and I got to the stage where I only needed 1 unit of insulin to about 35 grams of carbs. And it's come down a little bit since then, because at winter time cortisol increases and you're a bit less active. So at the moment I'm around 1 to 25 or 1 to 30 at the moment. Basically about 1 unit of insulin to 25 to 30 grams of carbs is where I'm sitting at now. Summertime it's about 1 to 35, sometimes 1 to 40. So straight away there you see how plant-based diets are effective in treating type 1 diabetes. They won't reverse it, they won't cure it, but they'll make you more sensitive to insulin. So by going from an insulin to carbohydrate ratio of 1 to 10, to 1 to 35, I actually cut my insulin needs by about two-thirds, and I eat more carbohydrates than ever. I have less lows, less highs, and in addition to that, my blood pressure dropped. So I'm about 120/70, sometimes 120/60 now, which is healthy, or slightly better than the average healthy person. And in addition to that, my resting heart rate actually dropped. So before I went vegan, my resting heart rate was about in the 60s, now it's in the 50s. So that gives you an idea of why you, as a type 1 diabetic, should go vegan. And it's just not type 1 diabetes that should cause you to go vegan and high carb. There's other things you need to consider, such as cancer, heart disease, osteoporosis, obesity, atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's, and dementia, various conditions. If you actually look at the medical literature, it's very clear that the vast majority of disease in our society today is actually caused by animal products, so meat, fish, chicken, eggs, milk and dairy, and processed junk food. Most of it is nearly all caused by food, and it's been demonstrated time and again by the Adventist Health Study, the Harvard Nurses Health Study, the China Study, and if you look at the work of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, he can reverse heart disease by putting people on plant-based diets. Get rid of all their meat, fish, chicken, eggs, milk, dairy, put them on plant-based diets, they reverse their heart disease. Dr. Neil Barnard, in the US. He can reverse people who have type 2 diabetes by putting them on plant-based diets, because they become more sensitive to insulin because they have less fat in their diet, and what happens is they reverse their diabetes. And if you're interested in this, I suggest you go into YouTube and type in uprooting the leading causes of death, and it will take you to a video of a presentation by Dr. Michael Greger. I think it's to the University of Pennsylvania or University of Philadelphia, and in it he explains why the top 15 leading causes of death in the US are preventable, reversible, or greatly reduced with a plant-based diet. So again, if you be a type 1 diabetic who's watching this, you can eat a very high amount of carbohydrates. If you're getting high blood sugars, look at the amount of fat you're eating. The amount of fat you eat can cause insulin resistance. If you go to a low-fat diet, it makes your body more sensitive, and it means you can eat more carbs and get less lows, less highs, and you'll cut your insulin needs. So I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's made sense. This is my second video to YouTube now, so sorry if the lighting isn't the best, or I'm not the best at this, but I'm still learning. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please put your comments, questions and criticisms in the comments below, and I will respond to them. And I hope this has been very interesting. Goodbye. Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about why type 1 diabetics should eat high carb, plant-based diets. The person is no longer able to produce insulin, and therefore the blood sugar increases. So carbohydrates excuse me, so carbohydrates are in no way, shape or form. So straight away a number of you are probably thinking, hang on, I'm diabetic, I can't eat carbohydrates, or at the very least you're thinking I can't eat a high amount of carbohydrates. And the reason for that is because type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition in which the person's immune system attacks the beta cells in the pancreas, which create insulin, and in turn what happens is that there's this wide prevailing misconception out there that people who are diabetic, can't eat carbs, but you have to ask yourself, what is type 1 diabetes? And the answer to that